All right, fine.
Today's story is about a lesser well-known cult and their heinous ritual that they admitted to
I'm
performing.
sorry.
This episode is extremely
Maybe it'll refresh my brain if we watch this. Maybe it'll refresh my brain. I don't know.
graphic and very upsetting. So viewers,
Oh, chat. Nick Crowley followed me back on Twitter. I win. I didn't even know he had a Twitter. He actually was recommended me the other day. I thought it was funny because we were watching him yesterday, and I gave him a follow, and he followed me back.
discretion is
Mr. Bald hasn't followed me back yet.
advised. But before we get into today's story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do.
You're not
We
balling
upload
enough?
2 or 3 times every
I'm gonna
week.
add him
so
right
if that's
now.
of interest to you,
I
please sneak
am
into
balling
the
enough.
Mike Button's house and steal the glass plate inside of their microwave. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads.
I will
All right,
not.
Let's get into today's story.
Okay, I will. I literally watch every single one of his videos anyway. I'm a loser.
In the early 1950s, Harold Alexander, who was a young stonemason living in Hamburg, Germany, came in contact with an old man named George Reel. George was the leader of a small religious group called the Lorber Society. This group, which never had a large membership at any point in their short history, was rooted in the Christian faith, but their views were far more extreme than the average Christian congregation. For example,
Here we go.
Many Christians believe in the concept of self-denial, which in layman's terms means to deny oneself some personal human pleasures, like certain sexual practices or the overindulgence of food, or
Masturbation, come!
drinking, and all of this is done to gain favor with God. But George and the other members of the
Hear that, chat? Stop fapping. God might start clapping them cheeks. That wasn't even good.
Society took this concept of self-denial to the extreme. They practiced it so aggressively and so literally that nobody in the society could really have a life of their own. All they could do to adhere to their society's very strict rules was to worship God 24/7. In addition to their very severe lifestyles, members of the Lorber
Certified
Society
freak
also
7 days a
believed
week?
that anybody outside of their small society was basically evil. So Harold meets George. It's unclear exactly how he meets George, but he does, and immediately Harold is blown away by George. He thinks he's totally incredible, he's so charismatic, and apparently George felt equally highly about Harold. And so right away they have
I have you on speaker, my family over here. Come, anal, come.
this
Okay, there you go.
strike up, and Harold and his wife Drogma, they end up joining the Lorber Society, and they completely give themselves over to this very intense lifestyle.
We're drinking water while these peasants starve.
Pig is a sussy backer.
I am. God, you're goddamn right.
They listen to everything George tells them to do, and then very quickly after Harold and his wife had joined this society, their leader, George, became very ill, and it became clear he was going to die soon. When George was on his deathbed, Harold went to visit him, and after speaking with him privately in this room, Harold emerges and he tells his wife that George has told him that he is going to be the next leader of the Lorber Society once George passes away. And so his wife accepts this, as does the rest of the society members. And then after George
weird church stuff, let's go.
Everyone in the society just turns towards Harold and begins listening to him and following him. It's worth noting that we don't know for sure if George really did tell Harold that he was going to be the next leader of the Lorber Society, or if Harold just made that up because he knew George was going to die soon and he could kind of get away with stealing that title. Over the next few years that Harold was in charge of the Lorber Society, he began introducing a new concept to the members. He would continuously tell them that they needed to be ready for when the next prophet of God returned to the earth. Harold told his members that when this happened, 1, Harold would know immediately and he would tell them, and 2, whatever this prophet wanted, no matter how confusing or crazy or terrible, they had to do it without question because
Man, religion
Without
is crazy, isn't
interruption,
it, guys?
let's celebrate
Connor
and
said-
suck some dick.
Oh! Yo! Holy shit, Connor! The fuck? 10 gifted subs. Let's go. Is he talking about George Lucas? Yes. He's talking about fucking George Lucas. But, yeah, that's what's fucking wild about, any religion whatsoever. Literally, if there's a pastor, they literally have control over every single one of them. Literally, his sources are trust me, bro. Like, his sources are actually trust me, bro. My 7-year-old walked into the room as he shouted, "Come, come." She asked why he shouted that. I said he's calling his dog. I'm now wearing headphones. Good. Good. Now you learned.
Because this was God's will. In 1953, so roughly a year or two after Harold has taken over the Lorber Society, he and his wife, Drogma, have their second child. It's their first boy, and they name him Frank. And as soon as this child is born, Harold looks at him.
They named their kid Frank? Yo, like, Frank is like, you would name your kid Frankie or Francis or something like that, but just Frank? That's like calling your child Bill. Not a real photo. This actually is a fake photo. This is my son, Frank. He's a coal miner. What? Your son's 1 year old? Yep, he's a coal miner. His name's Frank. He works on cars. He works in he has a factory job. He's a truck driver. His name's Frank. What's wrong with Bill? Naming a baby Bill? Like Billy or something like that? Yeah, that makes sense. But just Bill. That's when it's weird. I think Billy's fine, but when it's just like Bill. Hey, who's that kid? Oh, his name's Bill. What? You know, this is my baby. His name's Bill. Just have a picture of a random kid on it that says not a real photo in your wallet so you could pull that out when talking about your kid. Man, let me tell you. Let me show you something real quick. Yeah, see this? See this? It's not my kid. But man, that is a kid. Just start talking about my son. Oh, I love my son. Here, let me show you something real quick. Oh, that's cute. Is that your son? No, look at the bottom. That's a kid. It's not my son. And who the hell is that? I don't know. Found it online. I decided to put it in my wallet. It's a good talking point. While these peasants starve.
Say my name is Jeff.
No. Can't make me.
Him and determines that this boy, his son, is the prophet they have all been waiting for. And so he tells his wife and he tells the members of the Lorber Society that his son, Frank, is the prophet of God. And everyone across the board completely accepts it.
Sources, trust me, bro. Literally, Frank is the prophet, chat. You're going to trick everyone into believing the prophet's name is Frank? Come on. Come on, dude. Destroy the child.
As the prophet, Frank, grew up, he was shamelessly worshipped and waited on 24/7 by the members of
That's not a real photo.
the Lorber Society and his own family.
Key shit. I have it, honey.
And so naturally, this had a profound impact on the way Frank thought and how he behaved. By the time Frank was at the age of grade school children, he fully believed that he was the prophet of God, and he began using that authority to kind of boss his family around more than he really needed to, especially his 3 sisters and his mother. But no one ever intervened because, again, this is the prophet of God, and he can do whatever he wants. When Frank turned 16, he started thinking about girls and sex, but he was conflicted because he had been taught everybody outside of this society he was a part of were evil. And so he didn't want to pollute himself by having sex with these evil women.
Oh, no, don't tell me. Don't tell me. Don't tell me what he's about. I know what he's going to do. Don't do it. Don't you fucking do it, Frank.
And so he went to his father and told him that he wants to start having sex with his mother and his sisters.
God damn it, Frank!
In order to stay pure. And his father, Harold, not only embraced the idea, he encouraged it. And in fact, he would often join in with his son during the sexual intercourse. As for the 4 Alexander women, they completely accepted their new roles as sexual objects because they believed by doing whatever
religion
Frank the prophet wanted, they were serving God.
Religion,
Eventually,
chat.
one of the sisters began talking to some of her very few friends at school about how she was
They were going to watch some Scooby-Doo gameplay. What the hell are you talking about? Well, this is Scooby-Doo gameplay. What do you mean? What did I just join into? This is, we're playing Scooby-Doo. Monsters Unleashed. That's what we're doing right now.
Jealous of her other sisters for all the attention they were getting from Frank. And so the friends kind of picked up on this strange relationship between the siblings, and before long, rumors had started about there being some incestuous relations inside of this family, and those rumors eventually made their way—
Incest, sexual relationships between people classed as being too closely related to marry each other. In case chat wasn't aware, now you know.
To the parents of students, and then from the parents that made its way to the police, and before long Harold had discovered that the Hamburg police were about to launch an investigation into his family. And at the same time, Harold also discovered that members of the Lorber Society, they had heard about these incest rumors as well, and they had their own suspicions already, and they were not on board with incest, and so they were very clearly starting to distance themselves from Harold and his family. And so it was pretty clear to Harold that the writing was on the wall. He and his family were no longer welcome in Hamburg, and so he goes to the Lorber Society and kind of retires and says, you know, I'm leaving, you need to find yourself a new leader of this society. And then he and his family completely broke ties with the Lorber Society. They left Hamburg,
it's gonna get worse,
fled south to Santa Cruz, which is a city
it's gonna
on
get
the
so much
Canary
worse.
Islands
I know
in
it.
Spain. And so they settle into this little apartment inside of this busy city, and very quickly they fell back into their old routines of constantly worshiping Frank, the prophet of God, despite the fact that they were no longer affiliated with the Lorber Society. And so their actions were now being driven by their own personal belief system. 10 months later, on December 22nd, 1970, a wealthy doctor named Walter Trankler was at his villa, which was located not far from where the Alexanders lived, when he heard a knock at his front door. When he opened the front door, he saw there were these 2 men who he didn't recognize, who were covered head to toe in what looked like mud. And at first, he was totally taken aback by their appearance and almost wanted to just shut the door. But in order to be polite, he kept the door slightly open and said, you know, hey, how can I help you guys? And the 2 men would introduce themselves as Harold and Frank Alexander, and they were there to speak with one of their family members, Sabine. Sabine was one of Frank's 2 younger sisters, and she worked for the doctor as a housemaid.
Okay.
And so the doctor, he didn't know any of Sabine's family members, so he just kind of took their request at face value and said, hold on, let me go get her.
Knocks on doors, sound effects.
He goes into the kitchen and he finds Sabine, this 15-year-old girl, and he tells her that your father and your brother are waiting for you outside. They want to talk to you. And so Sabine, without saying a word, puts her knife and the food down. She walks out of the kitchen with the doctor, and as they're walking towards the front door, the doctor stops about 10 or 15 feet away from the front door to kind of allow Sabine to walk up and have a semi-private conversation with her relatives, although they're still inside of his house. So
someone's gonna die.
And so the doctor is standing maybe 15 feet away, wondering if he should just turn around or maybe just go into the other room to let them speak, when he overhears the father, Harold, say something truly horrific to his daughter. It was so shocking that the doctor stopped what he was doing, turned, and looked directly at Sabine to see how she was going to react to what she just heard. But to the doctor's absolute shock, Sabine didn't break down and start crying or start screaming out in pain or anguish. Instead, she reached out and grabbed her father's muddy hand and pressed it to her cheek and said, "I'm sure you did what was necessary." And then the 2 embraced. The doctor stood there totally shocked, staring at these people, wondering what the heck they're doing. Why are they here? What are they talking about? Is this really happening? And then he just kind of blurts out, "Hey, I'll be right back, stay right there." And then the doctor turned around and darted out of the front hall into another room where he barricaded himself inside, and then he called the police. When the police showed up just a few minutes later, they rolled into the front lot, and they saw Harold, Frank, and Sabine were still just casually standing in the front front doorway of the doctor's villa,
The fuck
seemingly
he
not
say,
really
bro?
trying to go anywhere or do
he's
anything.
clickbaiting me. He's clickbaiting me with his words right now.
And so the police get out of their car, they walk up to the trio, and they say, you know, what's going on? What are you doing here? And Harold, very calmly and casually, tells one of the officers the same horrible thing that the doctor overheard him saying to Sabine. Except this time, Harold specified to the officers where this horrible thing took place.
So he
said it
killed
happened
someone.
inside of their apartment. The police
killed
were
someone?
shocked at Harold's candidness and the fact that his two kids were standing right next to him and they're hearing what their father is saying. They too are
Did
just
he kill his
totally
mom?
detached,
What
very
happened?
calm, as if nothing their father is saying is having
Who
any effect on them.
died?
It's just totally business as usual.
Out
And
with
so the
it,
police
Ballin.
asked Harold to repeat the story a few times to make sure they were hearing him correctly, and then they just arrested Harold and his two kids. After the three Alexanders were brought to the police station, 3 other police officers were sent over to the Alexanders' apartment in Santa Cruz to see if what Harold had said was actually true. And when these officers opened the front door to that apartment, they immediately could tell it was all true. The following is the story of what happened inside of that apartment based on the testimony given by Frank and Harold. On December 21st, 1970, so that's one day before Frank and Harold...
Dude, what if he built this whole thing up and it and he just trolls us, and he says come, you know, like he says something dumb. Oh my God, he said that to her, and all he said was come. She's like, I understand, Daddy. And then he just keeps saying come to the cops. It's like, what? Repeat that again. What did you say? Come. What? Repeat that again. What did you say? That was it. That was the whole thing.
Arrived on the doorstep of the doctor's villa. The father and son were home in their apartment with the mother, Dragma, as well as 2 of the 3 sisters. It was 18-year-old Marina and 15-year-old Petra. The other sister, Sabine, she was over at the doctor's villa. She was staying with him for a couple of days while she worked there. At some point that afternoon, Dragma and Harold left the living room and went into one of the bedrooms to lie down and take a nap. And after they lie down, Frank, for some reason, gets up from the living room and walks into the bedroom and sits down on the edge of the bed and just stares down at his mother. And when his mother rolls over and looks up at her son, Frank would later tell police that the look she gave him was suggestive and it was offensive to Frank, and he believed she was not permitted to look at him that way. And so in this moment that she's looking at him, he said he instinctively knew that the killing hour was upon them. The killing
Dude, religion is so Dude, religion fucks with people's minds so hard, dude.
hour was not a Lorber Society concept. It was something that Frank and most likely Harold had come up with, and the rest of the family, the mother and the 3 sisters, had totally accepted. According to Frank and Harold, women were impure, and the only way to purify them, i.e. send them to heaven and not hell, was to murder them. And so it was just fundamentally understood in the Alexander household that at some point Frank was going to declare that the killing hour was upon them, and when that happened, all the women in the household were told to stop what they were doing and wait for Frank to sacrifice them. Meaning, wait for Frank to ritualistically kill them. So after Frank has seen this offensive look on his mother's face, he now feels like the killing hour is upon them, and so he literally announces it to his mother and to his father, who's right next to her, and then Frank grabs a nearby wooden coat hanger and strikes his mother on the top of her head. Now, his mother, she's heard that the killing hour is upon them, and he's starting to beat her, and so what does she do? She follows the rules. She flips herself over onto her stomach, puts her hands down by her side, and lays flat and still so Frank can more easily kill her. And so Frank begins wailing on the back of his mother's head with this wooden coat hanger, while his father, Harold, excitedly leaps out of the bed, doesn't try to stop what's going on. He runs into the living room, and he begins very enthusiastically playing the organ. An organ is like a piano.
What is this fucking sadistic shit, dude? What the fuck? Is this a movie? Yes! Do it, child! Do it! Just fucking playing the organ. What is happening? This is like a fucking anime villain, dude. Jesus.
Piano that's played a lot of times inside of Christian churches. And so with all this commotion going on in the house, the other two sisters that were there, Marina and Petra, they come out of their bedrooms into the living room. They see their father playing the organ, and they look into the bedroom where they hear all this noise, and it's Frank murdering their mother. And they're looking at this happening. They're not doing anything. They're just staring at it. And then their father says to them, "The killing hour is upon us. You need to get ready." And so the girls, when they hear this, they know the rules. And so they stop watching this attack, and they make their way over to the center of the living room.
What if he played like shit, dude? Like, what if his organ playing was terrible? That'd make it even better.
And they sit down cross-legged.
Based Frank? Dude, what? This is the worst comment I've ever seen in my entire life. Based Frank? Based? Is this based? I don't know.
Wait their turn. After a while, Frank stopped beating his mother, who was now unconscious or perhaps even dead.
Oh my
and he
God.
walked out of the bedroom into the living room, where he saw his father on the organ, and he
Based
saw
on
his
what?
two sisters sitting on the ground. And so without any hesitation, he walks over to Marina, the older one, the 18-year-old, and he begins hitting her on the top of the head until she slouches
That sound
over
effect.
onto the ground motionless. And then he turns to the younger one, Petra, the 15-year-old, and he does the same thing to her until she's laying on the ground motionless. After this, Frank stands up and he leaves the living room and goes into the kitchen, where he retrieves a small knife, pruning shears, and a hammer. At this point, it's likely that one or two of the Alexander women were still alive. And so Frank, he comes back into the living room with his tools in hand, and with the organs blaring in the background, he begins to systematically hack off the breasts and genitals of his two sisters and his...
That was too far. Okay. Whoa. Nope. Nope. No. Stop. I don't want to watch anymore. Wow. Okay, I'm not going to say that went from 0 to 100, because I mean he's murdering his family. But like, wow. New Resident Evil when? Like, what the fuck, man? What is even the what? What is it? What? Like, what religious shit is this, dude? Jack, you remember in the Bible where God said, "You must cut off booby"? Remember when in the Bible? No? No one? Okay. What?
Mother. And apparently this was a very slow and physically difficult task, and so he and his father Harold began switching off. One person would be on the organs while the other was mutilating, and they would switch back and forth until all of
what is this? What are these sound effects? Come on.
Three women had been removed and nailed to the wall. The last mutilation this father and son committed was to cut the heart out of the mother, Dragma, and they wrapped it up in a cord and then nailed this cord to the wall as well. Then, with the three Alexander women either dead or close to death, the father and son began running
the sound
around the
effects are
apartment,
overkill, I
yelling
agree.
and singing and rejoicing. They were extremely proud of what they had just done. Later that night, they left the apartment and slept in another property that they owned, and then the following day, December 22nd, they went to the doctor's villa.
Hit up the
to
Home
tell
Depot
Sabine the good
playlist.
news. And so they knock on the door, the doctor answers, he goes back, he gets Sabine. Sabine walks up, and Harold, her father, says to her, "Sabine, we wanted to tell you right away that Frank and I have just finished killing your mother and your sisters." To which Sabine walks up to him, takes her father's hand, presses it to her cheek, and says, "I'm sure you did what was necessary." This, of course, is what the doctor saw and overheard that was so horrible and prompted him to call the police. It was also the moment when he realized that was not mud all over these two men. That was their family members' blood. Psychiatrists would ultimately determine that Frank and Harold were not mentally fit to stand trial, and so they were both committed to an asylum for the criminally insane. Both men never showed any remorse or regret about what they had done. In fact, they continued to justify their actions by saying, because of them, these three women got to go to heaven. As for the one surviving daughter, Sabine, she pleaded with authorities to let her go live with her brother and her father in this asylum, but they rejected this request and sent her to live in a convent, which is a building that nuns live in, and no one really knows what happened to her after that. Shockingly, in 1990, so roughly 20 years
MP4 right
after
there.
Frank and Harold were put into this asylum, they managed to escape, and they were never caught. To this day, their whereabouts remain unknown. So that's going to do it, guys.
Whoa, what? Dude, how old is this shit, though? It's probably like the 70s? That's the 70s? That's it? The 70s, bro? That's only like 50 years ago, dude. Fuck that. Fuck that, dude.
Now it's time to walk away. I hope you enjoyed your stay. Did you laugh or cry or maybe subscribed? I'll thank you either way. You know I will miss you. I hope you return. Tell your friend or your mother to get me more views, please.